Hi, I'm George Milton.
I'm Tom Jode.
And this is Lenny Smalls. And we're here to tell you about our presentation about comparing the Grapes of Wrath and Of Mice and Men.
Now let's hear a little bit about the author of our books, John Steinbeck.
Hi there, I'm John Steinbeck. I was born in Salinas, California in 1902. I was raised in the fertile region of southwestern California. This familiar region to me appears multiple times in my books, including The Grapes of Wrath and Of Mice and Men. In 1919, I began school in Stanford University. However, I did not attend for a very long time because I went for manual labor. I went into the fields and watched them work. I wrote my very first book, Cup of Gold, in 1929, 10 years after Stanford University. You can't do the math. Then I wrote Of Mice and Men in 1937, followed by The Grapes of Wrath in 1939. Sadly, my heart disease killed me in 1968.
Now that you know about John Steinbeck, let's learn a little bit about his books, specifically the titles.
The title, The Grapes of Wrath, may have come from Julia Ward Howe's song, The Battle Hymn of the Republic, which was written while she was a Union nurse in the American Civil War. In her song, she mentions, "My eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord, who is trampling out the vintage where the grapes of wrath are stored." This speaks of the Lord trampling out the vintage, or vineyard, where the grapes of wrath are stored. Speaking of God's wrath of the people. This song was written in another time of great turmoil in the United States, similar to the Great Depression.
The best laid schemes of mice and men often go astray, and leave us naught but grief and pain for promised joy. Steinbeck most likely chose the title of his book, Of Mice and Men, from that poem written by Robert Burns in 1785. In the poem, a mouse wants to build its house out in a field, where the farmer ends up plowing right over it, destroying everything it had once worked for. The same is also similar about Of Mice and Men, how George and Lenny want to have a house tending the fields and the rabbits, and eventually fate steps its way in, and sadly they cannot ever finish their plans.
Let's meet our first set of characters, Ma and Tom Jode. They've been through a lot together in their trek across the country. Ma, how do you feel about your son stepping up to help lead the expedition?
I'm very proud of my son Tom. He sacrificed so much for us to get to California. He took care of us the entire journey, even breaking the law to go across state lines to lead us out here. On page 464, you can see he made the ultimate sacrifice and leave our group to ensure that we weren't caught. But even in doing so, he wasn't happy with his decision, but he had to live with it in order for us to be free. This decision shows how much he cares for us, unlike Connie and Noah, who left us.
Wow, Mrs. Jode, you seem to have a lot pent up. I'm sorry about your family. Let's move on to Tom. Why don't you tell us more about your mother? My ma has always been the glue that binds our family together. She is wise and generous, but not afraid to put her foot down and speak her mind. On page 467, she says that women's lives are all one flow, which shows exactly how she has kept herself together throughout the whole journey. She's my role model. She has always been willing to share whatever little that she has, even like the very little bit of food that we had in the Hoover town. Ever since we lost our house to the Dust Bowl in Oklahoma, we've been dreaming of having a new house in California, which also happened to be the same place that both these books are written.
Throughout both Grapes of Wrath and Of Mice and Men, the setting of the fertile southwestern California plays a huge role. The setting of paradise, this setting is one of paradise which all these characters are striving for and reaching for to get their own plot of land to own for themselves.
All throughout the book, what kept us going was the promise of a brighter future and the ability to start over a new life in California. However, once we got there, we found ourselves unwanted and often treated cruelly by the prior inhabitants, such as the mob in chapter 20. Now folks, let's meet our second set of characters. Meet George Milton and Lenny Small. George and Lenny have been together for years. They've been able to know each other very well. In fact, they've been even able to tell what the other one would say during certain circumstances. George, why don't you tell us a little bit about your buddy Lenny Small?
Lenny is a great guy. Despite his size, he would never intentionally hurt anyone. Actually, as you can see in the book, he's portrayed as almost a big baby. Just big and innocent. In the last chapter of the book, I comforted Lenny by talking to him about his one goal in life, to own a house and tend rabbits. When I was talking to him, he even forgot what kind of situation we were in, even after he just killed a person. He was even kind of giggling about it as he thought about the rabbits. That's what kind of man he is. Just real kind and nice. He just doesn't know how strong he is, that's all.
Now, Lenny, if you'd tell us a bit about George, that'd be great.
Okay, sure thing. You know, George's a great guy. Him and me, we're together, always. We're gonna get a house someday, we're gonna get a stove, some rabbits, a vegetable garden, a chicken coop. Oh, I can tend the rabbits, you know. It's gonna be so good. We're gonna live off the fat of the land, man. Fat of the land. And about George, he always took real good care of me. I never had to do anything by myself.
Now, let's go over to the three of us explaining the style of John Steinbeck's works.
You can see Steinbeck's style visible through his entire work. In all of his books you can see this. Especially if you turn to chapter 1 in the Grapes of Wrath.
This entire first chapter is cram-packed, full of description about the setting.
You can also see this in the last chapter of Mice and Men. The aspect to John Steinbeck's style concerning the conversations between his characters is clearly seen in chapter 7 of The Grapes of Wrath.
In this chapter, it's about a car dealer salesman who's trying to sell cars to all sorts of people.
And the entire chapter is just told through conversations, really quick glances of conversations for the entire chapter. Some might find that amazing and interesting to read in his style, while others, like myself, find that kind of confusing and annoying.
But Lenny, you're in the book.
Not in this one.
Oh. These different ways of writing are called style. Each author's style is unique to them. By examining their works, you can tell what each author's style is. In both The Grapes of Wrath and Of Mice and Men, John Steinbeck writes with an emphasis on the dialogue between his characters. Steinbeck's characters are a major focal point in his works, and much of the story is told through their conversations.
Steinbeck also focuses on description. This aspect to his style can be seen particularly in The Grapes of Wrath, but is also visible in Of Mice and Men.
Now, there are a few forces that take place, especially from society, inside John Steinbeck's books. Let's take a look at those.
One societal force is the Great Depression. The people at this time, particularly migrant workers like us, were paid very little. This fired their anger, which can be seen in the title, The Grapes of Wrath. This time of poverty was very disturbing for everyone, which made many people's goals unreachable.
Another societal force is the unfair treatment of minority groups. This force can be seen in the chapter concerning crooks in Of Mice and Men, when he talks about how unfairly he is treated. Also, Lenny is treated unfairly and almost cruelly due to his low intelligence. Other people, like us, the Jodes, and George, were treated unfairly because we were migrant workers and didn't have a steady job or a steady place to stay.
Alright, Lenny. Look on over there. Think of the rabbits. Let's move on to themes.
One theme shared throughout both the stories that we read from John Steinbeck was the concept of sticking with your family is very important, especially in hard times. This can be seen especially with George and Lenny. Even though George shoots Lenny, it's only because he was doing it because he was there for Lenny. Now in the Grapes of Wrath, Tom and Ma were always there for their family and did what was best for them, for the family, even if it meant leaving them to ensure their safety as Tom had to have done.
Another theme shared in the stories is that if you love someone, you must do what is best for them, even if the options aren't good. This can be seen when Tom leaves the family to keep them safe, and when George is always watching out for Lenny. When George first met Curly, he told Lenny to watch out for Curly. Lenny didn't see this at the time, but George was looking out for him.